Hello everyone. So this is going to be a short video on two things. So one being the concept of null values in SQL, and the second one being aggregate functions in SQL. Okay. So null values, at the face of it, it's quite straightforward that the value in an column for any particular tuple is null, right? And it has some interesting implications, right? So for example, if you add 5 plus null, the result will be null, right? Or you can use null to just search for you can use null as an selection condition. For example, if I would like to get all the tuples where the salary column is null, so I can write something like select name from instructor or select star from instructor where the salary column is null, right? So null actually, when it comes to Boolean conditions in the where clause, it creates an interesting thing, right? Uh, it this is something called as a three valued logic. Now I think you have three things here. So you have true, false, and unknown, right? And and then the details are something like this. Unknown or true is true, unknown or false is unknown, unknown or unknown is unknown, right? So these are the details, right? And right, and now in your inside your SQL, let's say that you have some column values which contain null values, right? And these null values can come from multiple things, like you did not know the value at the time of data entry, so you just left it null, and so on, right? Now at least in some SQL, the textbook recommendation is that whenever the where clause predicate is if it evaluates to null as per these three valued logic, it is automatically convert it's automatically converted into a false, right? So these things you have to be little bit careful when you are working with data which has null values there, right? So the where clause can sometimes behave in an slightly unpredictable way, right? Or it may not give you the output which you intended, right? Some tuples can simply be thrown away because the where clause, the attributes which the where clause was involving, it had null values, right? So moral of the story is that if your data contains null values, be little bit careful when you are using those columns in your where clause, right? Otherwise you may have some unintended results, right? Just this is small word of advice kind of a thing, right? Of course more details, you can get more details only by going through the documentation of the database software you are using, right? But at the textbook level, this is just a word of advice which the textbook authors give us. Okay. Okay, now, yeah, aggregate functions. So in aggregate functions, the standard aggregate functions are average, min, max, sum, and count. I think we covered these things already in relational algebra, right? So here also the null values sometimes they have some interesting things. So for example, if you write count star, it returns the number of tuples in the result. Whereas if you put something like this count a, right? So you have your from select something and then from where everything is there, right? The whole of the where clause and the from, this all is getting evaluated, and finally in the projection part you write this count a, right? So what it may do is that out of the resulting set or bag from the where clause and all that, it will see the column A, and when you write count A, it is going to return the number of tuples which have non-null values in the attribute A. If you just write count star, maybe it will just return the number of tuples, right? I think we have a link. I have put a link over here. You can get more details on the implementation specific things of how these things change in presence of the null values. Okay, now next part is the group by clause in SQL. Very important and also a major source of errors by many students, right? So this group by clause is very similar to the gamma operator, or the group by operator, which I covered in the relational algebra, right? So the way we use it is very similar to that. uh, so you first define the data set which you want to uh, search through. So in this case, this is the instructor relation, and you take tuples of the instructor relation and you group by department name, right? So that's what you see here from the data set, quote unquote, and the tuples of this data set are grouped by the values present in the department underscore name attribute of this relation, right? So this is the instructor relation, and I am grouping on this column. So basically I'm going to parse this entire instructor relation and then group the tuples as per the values in the department name, right? And as I said before, the output of an query with group by clause involves only one tuple per group, right? So if the department name over here had maybe 6 or 7 unique values, you will have only 7 tuples in the final result, right? When you have this from and group by, right? Now for each group you need to put one tuple, right? So by default, this select department name, it has to be same, and for every column which is not in this group by should be put under an aggregation function, right? So for example, salary, or if there are other things over here, so you can write average salary. So what it will do is that for the biology group, it will take all the salaries and it will compute the average salary. You can write max salary, min salary, whatever, right? So always the key is one tuple per group, and in and over here, anything which is not put under an aggregation operator must be present in the group by clause, right? So this department name, since it was in the group by clause, I could write department name like this, right? Otherwise this would be an error, right? So for example, if I do something like this, select department name comma id, id is this guy, department name comma id, then average salary from instructor and group by department name. This is an erroneous query because you have an column written in the select clause which was not a part of the group by clause, and there is no aggregation operator on this. Now there are some software vendors, in that case, what they do is that whenever something like this happens from this group, so let's say, as I said, it is still only one tuple per group, right? So let's say you take the computer science group, you have 3 tuples over here, right? So when I take the average, I'll take the average of salary of these 3 tuples, right? And now ID is written just as it is. Now what some software vendors do is that from this group they will randomly pick one ID and write it. But in many other software distributions of database, this is given as an error, because conceptually also it does not make sense, right? So the concept of the group by operator was always that you group your tuples according to a column, and for every group you return one tuple, right? And in that one tuple, for all the other attributes you have to put some aggregation, average salary, min salary, max salary, something like that. You cannot write a column name by itself, and similar to the case with relational algebra, I can group by this group by class can have more than one attribute. If it has more than one attribute, I will see all values for that pair of attributes, all unique values for that pair of attributes, right? Okay, so that is group by, and then next you have is something called as having clause. Okay, so having clause is very important, and this is also a place where many of the students make mistakes. So having clause is an extra selection, or quote unquote where clause for the groups, right? So it is having clause by default is not by default it's not used otherwise. It is used only along with the group by operator, right? So the way to think about is that first you perform all the group by operations. You take the instructor tuples, you group by, and then for each group you can try to put some kind of an testing on at the group level. So for example, over here I want to find names and average salaries of all the departments whose average salary is greater than 42,000. So now the way this query is going to work is that I'll take tuples from the instructor relation, I'll group by department name, and then we have groups, one group basically for each department name, right? And for each of those groups, I'm going to go inside the group, and then I'll compute the average salary. And if the average salary is greater than 42,000, then that group is sort of pushed forward for the final projection operation. Otherwise, no, right? So for any group level filtering, if you want to do, having clause is the way to do it. So for example, if you had a query like find the names and average salaries of all the departments, and do this only for those departments which have at least 2 employees, right? So if I had a query like that, what will I do is that I'll change this, and I'll say that I'll take the tuples from instructor, group them, and then I'll write a having clause which will say that having count star greater than 2. That means now after I have performed the grouping, for each group I'll do the count star. That means I'll count the number of tuples in that group, and if that number of tuples is greater than 2, I am going to pass that forward. Okay, and for all the groups which go forward, you finally do the projection operation, right? So that's the way of thinking about having clause. It is a way to perform group level filtering after you have done the grouping operation. You would not be using having clause otherwise. It is used only with a group by operator, right? Many times students confuse between having clause and where clause, but the way to note the difference is that the where clause, whatever you write here. So let's say I write something like this, select department name, average salary from instructor, where something something, right? So what will happen is that the where clause gets executed first. So you take the instructor relation, you would do the where clause, and then the result would be grouped, and then you would do the group level filtering using the having clause. Finally, the projection. That is the order of execution. First, the where clause, then the group by operator, then having clause, which is done on the group level filtering, which is used for group level filtering, and then finally the projection. This is the order in which these clauses are used. We are going to give some sample questions, so make sure you try all of them out, because this is a place where many students make mistake. They get confused between the where clause and the having clause, and when it's used, when each one of them is executed. Okay. Okay. Okay, just few more details on how the null values have apply to the aggregation operations. I think you can just read this slide. Okay, and textbook obviously has more details. Now let's take a simple example here. Yeah, okay, let's see this example. So we are back to our product PC, laptop, and printer schema, right? And on this schema, we want to find, for each manufacturer, the average screen size of its laptops, right? Okay, now how do we do? So we want to get only the average screen size of the laptops, right? And we want to do this for each manufacturer. So clearly, whenever a clause like this comes, find for each manufacturer or find for each country or each instructor, the moment you see find for each, you take it that some there's a very good chance that there will be some group by operator, right? So now which table does the manufacturer information which table contains the manufacturer information? It is the product table, right? So only product table contains the manufacturer information, right? And we want to use only laptops, and we want to compute the average size of laptops, right? So certainly some kind of join has to happen between my product and laptop, because screen size is sitting in laptop only. Now what do? We take an instance of the product relation, we take an instance of the laptop relation. I filter out, p dot type equal to laptop, but I don't think it's really needed because model number is unique, right? And I perform the join, right? So now I have joined the product relation and laptop relation, right? So that means, any maker, if he or if that company has made at least one laptop, that information of that laptop will be sitting in this portion of the query, right? So from across this cross product join, right, I will have then information. Any maker who has made even a single laptop will come in this part. Now what we have to do is that across all these tuples we have to group them according to the manufacturer, right? So these tuples, if you have to group them, I do this. I put the group by clause, right? So so the result from this portion is grouped on the column p dot maker, right? So that means it will create groups for each unique value of p dot maker that you see in this highlighted portion of your whatever data set gets created after this executing this highlighted portion. You group the tuples on the p dot maker attribute. So that means for each manufacturer, you have some couple of tuples, right? And for each group, we want to compute the average size of its screen. Now, the screen information is here because we have already joined with the laptop, and the laptop table contains the screen information. So I just put the grouping operator on the screen column, so that if you want to be a little bit more thorough, you write here select p dot maker and average screen, right? So if you write like this, you will get one value. After this group by, you have to get always one tuple per manufacturer, and for that tuple, we are going to project on the manufacturer name and the average of the screen values that you see in that group, right? So that is how this query works. If you have any questions, do let me know. I think I have here other sample questions also. Yeah, so I think you should try this and then get back to me. Okay. So hope you have understood the group by having clause and all that. Just to summarize, first the where clause is executed, then the group by clause is executed, then the having clause is executed, and finally the select is. That is the order in which, conceptual order in which these things are executed. Okay. Okay then.